This is a talk about anxiety. It's a talk about fear. Start with the music because it gives a really interesting insight to the way that fear works. You imagine any music venue, any kind of music where there's a beat and a pulse and you might want to get up and dance. To be the first person to get up is incredibly difficult. It's incredibly hard because your brain's going, everyone's looking, everyone's watching. What are they going to think of me? And we play these things out in our head the entire time. But one person gets up and dances. The reason we had who will be the first is because the next person to get up has still also got to deal with a fair amount of fear. Because they're thinking the same thing. But it's not quite as big as for that first person. And then the third person will get up. And the fourth person will get up. And each person, that fear reduces. Until there are more people dancing than there are not dancing. And when they're not dancing, it's more scary to not be dancing than be up and dancing. That fear moves around and it flips on itself. So people will join in because we want to be a part of the crowd. It's human nature to be a part of a community for the most of us. So that population dynamics thing really gives us a notion of how that fear can work. So the first question I would ask is, what is anxiety? And it will be different for every person. It will have different feelings, different emotions attached to it for every person. And it's based on different things. It comes from that thing that we had when we were in small groups and something happens and you have those three F's. Fear is flight, fight, or freeze. And we needed those chemical flows, those chemical movements to survive. Because something happens and you do one of those three things. Now we've got our safe communities. We have our big brick houses to live in. Most of those wild animals are either extinct or far away from us. So we don't need those chemical reactions, but we've still got them. And we haven't got the resources, we haven't got the capacity to deal with them the way that we used to. So we channel them into things that don't really matter in quite the same way. So it's natural to have those fears. But the point is we now apply them in a lot of cases to situations that don't really matter. But to each and one of us, they're extremely personal and they really do matter. So it is that. We spend a lot of our time worrying about what other people think. So, I'm standing here because I have to manage quite severe anxiety. One of the reasons probably I can't stand still on the same spot. But when I sit down, I'm always fiddling and picking, and because it's rumbling all the way through me. One of the most important things for me when I manage anxiety is that I remember I have a choice. I have a choice. Whatever I do, whatever I'm feeling, I have a choice. How I react. And that comes down to a realization that you don't actually have to react to a situation, you can respond to it. But most of us instinctively react. Somebody's just been nasty to me, therefore I should feel upset about it. Oh, I am upset about it. You can't have an emotion without having had a thought first. It might only take a second to have that thought, but you cannot have an emotion unless you've had a thought first. That's quite powerful. And I know that people will argue with me to the back teeth about that one, but all the research shows, and my experience now is showing me, if I stop just for a second and go, whoa, then I can put most of my anxieties aside. Might take a little while, might have to work at it, but I know I have a choice. So if something happens that's a real important thing, I generally will say, I'm not making a decision about this till tomorrow. The minute I defer that decision, that crisis becomes less. And generally the next day, it's not half as big as it was the first time I heard about it anyway. I make that decision. You cannot have an emotion without having had a thought first. So I choose not to react. I've got a bit of a reputation for being Captain Slow now. Don't care. I have a choice. The one that really gets me though, is there's something locked down deep in my subconscious. I don't know what it is. And every now and then, it's like somebody flicks a switch. Boom. And there's an instant overreaching feeling of absolute dread. Like somebody has got a big Joe bulk bag of stuff on my shoulders. And it's incredibly hard to do anything. I don't know what it is. There are theories now that suggest a lot of that anxiety is actually passed through from previous generations. And I know I have a granddad that he was never talked about. He was the big secret in the family who committed suicide. It might just have been married to my grandmother because she was hard work. But, you know, maybe there's something in there from that. Research is starting to indicate that that could be a possibility. So there's something in there. I don't get too many of them anymore because I manage them. I know how to manage them. It's different, I imagine, for everybody. But there have been occasions, and they've been at work, and you just bang. And it can take half an hour, 3/4 to actually manage it and deal with it, and then get it to go away. But I know I can manage it and deal with it, because when there's some Herbert doing something daft, you've got to deal with him, no matter what. So you manage it, because you have to. I also choose, I don't suffer with it. I choose not to. In fact, I even met a lady earlier this year. She was an Indian, Hindu, Ayurveda lady, and she said, I can get in there and I can find it. And I actually said, I thought about it. Of course, don't do anything immediately. I thought about it. And I actually said, no, not now. That might have been fear as well. But that anxiety, it fires me up and it gives me my creativity. And quite frankly, I don't want to lose my creativity. You know, it gives me the ability to come up and stand here and hopefully make a fairly impassioned speech. It means I can write books. It means I can get information across. And right now, I'm not giving that up. There may be a day, but I live with that. I also use an awful lot of bad language on occasions. That helps as well, because there are times when you're in that situation, and the phrase I have is F this S. You can probably work out what it is. But it's incredibly powerful, 3 words, and it works. I'm not putting up with this. So it's a bit of a balancing act. But I'd imagine everybody who has it, deals with it, will deal with it differently. This is an interesting one, narcissism. Everybody is born a narcissist. You have to be. You're entirely dependent on other people. And it is all about you. When you're born, it's not about anyone else. You have no concept of anything else. So it has to be about you. Look at the average toddler. It's all about them. They're pushing boundaries. How can I get this person to do this? And every kid knows within a few months how to press mum's buttons. Because they do it. But I suggest that with the right nature and the right nurture, we move from narcissism to empathy. We don't always get the whole way, because if we're totally empathetic, that's almost as bad in some ways, because we can suffer because we're giving it all away. But ultimately, narcissism is extreme anxiety, whereby you're trying to control everything for your own gain. That one's to be wary of. But it is interesting. So I read it the other day and I thought, you know what, that is quite an interesting thought. We are born narcissists. We have to be. How do we manage it? Again, further. I am aware of my conscious thinking. I talked about this a bit just now. I am aware of my conscious thoughts almost all the time. And if I'm not, Gillian is. Because it's really easy to start saying negative things, talking negative things, thinking negative things. They won't turn up. What do they think of me? I wear these coats for 2 reasons. Firstly, I wanted to wear them when I was a teenager, but I didn't have the bottle. I watched Poldark with my mum and dad the first time round, Robin Ellis and Angard Rees. And I loved it. I loved the costumes, I loved the coats. I've always loved the period stuff. But I was a teenager. It was new wave of British heavy metal. Leather jackets, denim jeans and t-shirts and nothing else. Well, underwear I guess, but it didn't fit in. The tribe I wanted to be a part of wouldn't accept these coats. I believe, because at that time you worried about what everyone else thinks because you want to fit in. Nowadays, I wear them. Now, the reason I wear them now is because 40 years ago, I didn't realise I was managing anxiety. I didn't know that what I was feeling was quite severe anxiety. There wasn't anyone to talk to. My dad didn't know how to talk to me. I grew up in a loving household, but we didn't have those conversations. You know, if you were a nutter, you went to the doctor and he gave you tablets and everyone laughed at you. And that was it. So I spent 35 years self-medicating with alcohol. I got to the point where I didn't have a full level. Because I didn't know any better. I thought everyone was feeling the same. I was just dealing with it badly. Turns out that wasn't the case. But I didn't know any better. So now I'm aware of it. These coats for me are a symbol of how far I've come. I didn't stop drinking because I knew I was dealing with alcohol, but anxiety. I stopped drinking because I couldn't cope with the trail of destruction I was leaving behind me. And I have got a fairly raging conscience. So I stopped drinking alcohol. And you know what? When you want to, it's really easy. It's just wanting to that's a real tough one. It took 5 years for me. And then you realise actually that nobody really cares that much about what you're doing because they're too worried about themselves. Because we are, you know, I haven't got enough money to pay the bills. What am I doing this weekend? Who's coming round? Am I having a dinner party? Am I doing this? Am I doing... Everyone's worried about themselves for the most part. So I wear them now because I've come a long way in the last few years. You know, a lot of that's me, but I'm also been really fortunate to have a fantastic woman at my side who supported me the whole way. In fact, she saw something in me that I didn't see back those days. So I'm dead lucky in that respect. How do I manage it? That's the one. It's easy. Well, I used to have an elastic band up. I used to put my wrist because a pattern interrupt. The minute you catch yourself on a negative point and do it 4 or 5 times, okay, you say it's self-harm. It's not self-harm. It just reprograms the connections up here. And it works too. I ended up giving it to one of the kids in the kids' home and I haven't put it back on. And not too bad these days. Somebody doesn't rock it. It's like today. There are loads of people who booked up and didn't rock in. You know what? We focus on those who are here. Here's a little history, as you mentioned. I do long distance walking. The countryside is my second home. I go into the woods and I can feel everything else just drop away. I go out on walks and I can feel everything else just drop away. Took my son to the West Highland Way when he was 13. No internet, no Wi-Fi, he became a human being. Which is pretty cool. So last year, I always wanted to walk the Pennine Way from the minute I knew it existed. It's 268 miles long, so you can't fit it into a weekend. Julian said, look, you're going to be 60 next year, why don't you think about doing it whilst you still can? That's a great idea. So, yeah, we put it in, we looked at it, we talked it through. And then I'm starting to think, do you know what? If I'm going to do 268 miles in 30 days, touch wood, I can maybe raise a little bit of interest and some funds to support the work people do on mental health. From there, that kind of developed, and I got introduced to a fellow called Mike McCarthy, who is the co-founder of the Baton of Hope. Talk more about the Baton of Hope in a minute. But then I'm thinking, if we're going to raise that, I've got a business background. My business background says the most powerful positive products come from collaboration. I wonder if we can do this together. And on several times in the past, I pinged out emails and talked to people and got nothing back. I emailed Mike and said, how about the Baton of Hope comes along with me and we do this together? And he said, seems like a good idea to me. Well, a response, my God, a response. I've got a response. Polite boy. So the Baton of Hope is now coming on. And the Baton of Hope is now going to give this walk some kind of authenticity and credibility. because the Baton of Hope is possibly the biggest, or will be the biggest suicide prevention charity this country has ever seen, and hopefully the world will ever see. The Baton, again, you'll see a picture of it in a minute, is the most fantastic piece. It's a symbol. Now, if you want to play football and you're getting good at it and you go and enter into a competition, if you win it, you get a cup, a trophy. If you're really good at rugby and you go in, you get the Webb Ellis Cup or the Six Nations trophy. There's something there. At the end of that journey, at the end of that challenge, you receive something to say, look, whoa, I made it. If you manage to take on depression and suicide and come out the other side, there isn't actually anything apart from your life to hold up and say, look. So the Baton is a symbol. That was pretty amazing. I was really made up about that. One of those things where you send out, you just hope that somebody will reply, and they did. And then from there I met a fella and we had this idea of putting together a CIC to support people, to help them make positive decisions to support their mental health. Those options that I didn't have when I was a teenager, when I was a young man. Because we can all make positive decisions. So the Mind now exists. Our first battle was with Companies House. It took 4.5 months to do something, it should have taken about 10 days. But we got there. We then had a battle with the banks. And it looks like now we're not going to have one bank account, we're going to have two. Whoa. One of our fellow directors is here, Kelly's here right now, and that's fantastic. She's helping us drive this thing forwards. So, Baton of Hope. That's the Baton. Matching coat, which is the same one. Mike McCarthy, the co-founder, that was at the Baton of Hope's conference in the middle of May. Went up to Sheffield and had a very emotional day. As you can imagine, with the topic as it was, there was a lot of tears, there was a lot of emotion and a lot of outpouring, but also a huge amount of positivity. Huge amount of positivity. And it was great to actually catch up and actually meet Mike and get my hands on the Baton, because that's about 30 grand's worth of kit. It is silver and gold. And the symbolism, you can't really see it from here, but if you go and have a look at it on the Baton of Hope website or on their Instagram or the LinkedIn page, the symbology behind it is amazing. So it's 30k. So I've only actually got it on the walk for the first and the last day. I don't want it in the middle in a tent with 30 grand's worth of, no. So that was pretty phenomenal. But if you then take a step past anxiety, and I have to admit, I don't know a huge amount of depression. I've never been diagnosed depressed. I have not tried to commit suicide. But it's often a logical progression. There are some pretty horrible numbers. Suicide. 6,000 people completing suicide a year in England and Wales. It's the biggest killer of men under 40. And I was reading today the stats in construction sites of construction workers committing suicide have gone up 50% in 2 years. I think it's like 400 and something to over 600. And having talked to the people who are related to those who have completed suicide, those people who have managed to walk away from it, survived it, and those people researching it, they are all preventable. If we just step up and look at those people around us. If they are preventable, we are not doing enough. Simple as that. So what do? Firstly, normalise it. How many people, we've seen dramas on the TV, been there, you think someone's like to commit suicide. Are you about to do something stupid? No, they're not doing something that they perceive as stupid. Have you not been thinking about your family? Yes, anyone in that position will have overly thought about their family. Overly over thought about it and are utterly convinced they're better off without them. Normalise it. Take that stigma away. Remember 20 years ago, we didn't talk about cancer, it was the big C, it was the C word. If someone's depressed, are you thinking about committing suicide, completing suicide? And then ask them open questions. Avoid that yes and no. We've all been there. How are you? Are you all right? Yeah, I'm fine. You sure you're fine? Yeah, I'm fine. You ask a yes or no question, everyone will say they're fine. Nobody fakes feeling depressed. They fake feeling okay. And if somebody's been depressed and they're suddenly starting to be really, really cheerful, that's the time when we have to notice and we have to worry, because that means they've probably made a decision. And we all know, whether it's selling our house, getting a loan, ending your job, whatever it is, the minute you make that decision, you feel better because you've shifted the weight. So we need to observe. We need to look at those people around and ask them open questions. How are you today? Because I'm not feeling too good. Can you tell me more about that? Can you tell me why you're feeling this? Open questions. Don't ever shut anyone down. Just be open, be aware. Slow the Mind is trying to buy a bus. We're raising funds at the moment to buy a bus. We want to buy a bus that can be a safe place, that we can take into our communities, into our workplaces, into our colleges, universities. We'll have it on the edge of cities, because people want to be able to come to us feeling anonymous. No one's going to walk into a bus that seems to be a safe space for someone from mental health who's got mental health written all over the thing and it's full of people, because we don't want to be seen. The stigma is still there. But if we can find a safe place where people can come and either have a chat or drink a tea or coffee or a can of Coke, that's got to be a good thing. And then hopefully what I want them to do is to look for signposting. Places they can go, where there's either specialists or activities, whether that's martial arts instructors, because martial arts is all about this. It's not about the swords and the weapons and all the rest of it, it's all about this. Slowing that mind down, controlling it. It might be coming on one of the outdoor experiences that I run. Signposting. I've got thrown out of a couple of men's safe spaces for saying things like, I've tried this and it really works. They're wallow fests. We need to get away from that wallow fest thing. So, if you're in an organisation or a workplace that's got enough people, a few people in it, we'd love for you to get enrolled in the bus fare. And that's basically, every time you have a cup of tea or a coffee or a Coke or a chocolate, when you're at work, you put £1 in that pot. The next day for that is next Tuesday. If you're in a position to get involved with that, that would be absolutely fantastic. We're just putting together our sponsorship package now. There's a couple of pictures and bits and pieces. If you want to make more of a financial commitment, we can organise that as well. Whatever happens, on whatever level, you will get your business name and logo on the back of the bus. This is Rotary. And that's basically, every time you have a cup of tea or a coffee or a Coke or a chocolate, when you're at work, you put £1 in that pot. The next day for that is next Tuesday. If you're in a position to get involved with that, that would be absolutely fantastic. We're just putting together our sponsorship package now. There's a couple of pictures and bits and pieces. If you want to make more of a financial commitment, we can organise that as well. Whatever happens, on whatever level, you will get your business name and logo on the back of the bus. This is Rotary. I went out last week and had a good old chat with Deal Rotary. And I can't remember the fellow's name, head of Mike. Anyway, Mike Dallin is very much interested in putting a foundation application together, and he would like to talk to whoever's the relative person in Dover to put in a joint application. Because if you remember, those of us that were here when Brian Den came in and he made the point foundation grants are accessible. We'd like one. Let's put it blatantly, we'd like one. It will help. And you know what? I've got a book out. It's actually out to the world today. It's there. It's that one. There's the sheeple principle there and how to avoid it. Because ultimately, if we spend our time following the herd and becoming sheep, that makes us a sheeple. And we don't want to do that because that will keep us away from anxiety. The back cover actually isn't called Living with Anxiety in the Modern World. And you know what? I know I'm biased. I'm told it's pretty good. So if you'd like to buy it, I'd love you to buy it. Because that would be a good thing and you might get some kind of further understanding. We've also got some copies of the other ones and some special deals and stuff. And I'd also just like to say that Jodie did the cover for this, and I think she did an absolutely top dollar, fantastic job. In fact, the fact she's here now filming this means that Jodie has to take that layer of top human beings, as far as I'm concerned. So thank you very much for Jodie. Thank you very much for Gillian, A, for letting me loose in here, because she knows what I can be like when I've got a bit between my teeth and hang her on a bit. So thank you very much to Judith. Thank you very much to all of you for coming along tonight. I hugely appreciate it. I don't know what the situation is with questions, but I'm here for the evening. If you want to talk to me or ask me anything, please do. Feel free to dip in your pocket, buy the book. There's even a card machine, because we don't want anyone to say I've got no money on them. Am I being boring now? I hope not. Thank you very much indeed.